Hey friends, welcome back and welcome to a brand new series on books that changed my life, in which I share with you the books that over the course of the long time that I've been reading, because I've always loved reading, that have, I think, had a massive impact on my life and my character and etc. It's like, as Teddy Roosevelt said, I am part of every single book that I have read. But some books are more valuable than others, and sometimes some books are just nonsense. Especially when it comes to non-fiction, self-help, productivity, life goals, etc. I believe that there's a lot of nonsense in books, right? So you would rather read the top 100 books over and over again until you become those books, until you put those principles in action without even thinking, than read like 1,000 books out of which only 100 are any good, but it doesn't matter anyway because you've only skimmed read them like once or twice, and you're filling your head with all crap from all the other crap books that are published all the damn time. So let's dive straight into it. And the first book, or at least the book that started it all for me, at least personally, is none other than the legendary classic How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now, I cannot emphasize to you how important this book was to me. I think I received it maybe like 5, 6 years ago. Yeah, maybe 5 years ago. And actually, it was a gift from my mother who was like, oh yeah, Rishi needs to read this book. And actually, yeah, I was kind of like offended. I was like, come on, mom, like, why are you giving this to me? Do you think I'm lonely? I have no friends, I'm a useless guy. I'm glad I read that book though. Because when I started reading that book, I began to realize that I had a lot of social skills that I could improve upon and gain. And no longer was I just trying to struggle and bash my head against the same damn walls all the damn time. Because with that book, I realized that I could actually read on how to improve myself and then become a better person through those books. And How to Win Friends and Influence People was definitely right up there on how to become a better person. And I've used its principles everywhere, and I cannot tell you how many times it's like saved my life. Now, the second book on my list is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And if you have been following my videos, my projects, my life online for any length of time, you would realize that this book alone has had such a massive, outsized impact on my life. It's hard to really imagine. The beauty about 7 Habits is that it's not only really practical, it not only gives really practical advice about how to live in like modern society instead of being like, oh, let's get spiritual and let's think less about money and family and, we can cut down on all of this stuff because minimalism, etc. But it's really, really practical and spiritual at the same time. Spiritual as in asking yourself like, what is my life mission, what's my goal in life, my mission, my values. It forces you to think about all these things, beginning with the end in mind and all. And in fact, these 7 habits that are outlined in this book, I have applied them every single damn place I go, and they have brought me like success, or at least kept me from failing miserably everywhere I go. I think 7 Habits is a modern classic. It's something that everyone can read right now, and I believe it will still be relevant like 300 years from now as well. Even if we're like living in spaceships on Mars or going to Venus or going anywhere else. I really don't recommend reading any of the other kinds of books like 7 Habits for teenagers or 7 Habits for families and all. If you want to, that's great. But really, the main book, the only book that you really need to read from Stephen Covey is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that is it. Now, moving on, I actually have a biography to recommend to you. And I love reading biographies of famous people, eccentric people, people who are different, because I feel because I tend to get inspired. Plus, you start to learn key lessons from their lives. Like, you can begin to see patterns, you begin to see how they worked, their way of viewing the world. It's not necessarily that you have to follow them, or if you follow them, you necessarily become successful. It could just be fluke. but one biography that I absolutely loved and really changed the way I perceived the world was Jobs by Walter Isaac. Of course, painting a portrait none other than Steve Jobs himself. While I was reading this book, I was also running a bakery at the same time, taking orders for customers and the like. And this massively influenced the way I perceive design and life in general. Steve Jobs' relentless pursuit of simplicity became my relentless pursuit of simplicity. And not in a form of like minimalism, but even in the way you use words, or perhaps in the way you try to comprehend something. It's all about cutting it down to the most simplest possible and really internalizing the fact that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. It's not sophisticated to say something in like a very complicated way because anyone can do that. Anyone can throw all sorts of jargon at you. But when you see Steve Jobs and the stuff that he did, the way he made the really complicated stuff really simple, that shows real sophistication because not everyone can do that. And that is something that we all can strive to be. While you're reading his biography, you'll also come across like the less desirable aspects of his nature, the way how he treated his children, also the fanatical devotion he inspired in his employees in his pursuit to like change the world by making great products. Honestly, whether you like the man, whether you hate the man, whether you think Apple is the best thing since sliced bread, whether you think it's the worst thing, it doesn't matter. You have to read Jobs by Walter Isaac. Now, I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, I'm going to be a bit sneaky, and I'm not going to recommend to you one single book that changed my life, but actually a collection of three, or actually a whole selection of books on a particular topic. And that is Nassim Nicholas Taleb's The Incerto, in which basically he talks about black swans and probability. And in addition, he talks about being anti-fragile, or things that gain from disorder. I guarantee you, if you read this book, then your entire perspective on the world will change from everything. I think this concept of anti-fragile that he talks about and he introduces the word for, that is worth its weight in gold, literally. Like buying that book is worth it for that thing alone. Even though his entire collection is like a treasure trove of like really life-changing stuff. I really recommend not diving straight into Nassim Nicholas Taleb, because if you do, then you could very well find yourself in like some sort of deep existential crisis in which everything you know and everything you believed in is being called into question. And one point I have to absolutely stress is that his writing style is utterly pathetic. Honestly, it's like words have fallen all over the fruit of meaning in his writing. But if you manage to survive all that and if you're able to actually read it, you'll see that his ideas are so beautiful, his ideas are so like wonderfully sharp, shining, etc. They actually survive the stranglehold of his shitty prose. As for anything I recommend or anyone else recommends, always keep an open mind and always, more importantly, practice critical thinking. Think about things critically, don't take anything at face value, even if it's some idea written in a book. Nassim Nicholas Taleb writes about a lot of things that I completely disagree about in The Incerto. And you may also find some things that you disagree with, and that is good because it shows that at least you're thinking for yourself and you've reflected about things and at least you've arrived at a conclusion about it. Meaning you're not just absorbing, you're not just a sheep, you're not just blindly following whatever the man is saying. And finally, we have a book that has an almost as equally or if not worse writing style than Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Incerto, which is The Rule of Law by Tom Bingham, who is some retired senior law lord of the UK. Again, as with Taleb, the writing style is utterly pathetic. He writes like he's speaking out loud, and it appears and it's almost as if every single sentence is punctuated with I think. Not like we, the readers, know that it is what he is thinking. But if you read this book, then you will truly understand what is, in fact, the foundation of all free society today and what rule of law really refers to. In fact, I would go on to say that the law is humanity's greatest invention because without the law, society is nothing. You cannot function without the law. Of course, I may be slightly biased in recommending this book because I am personally very interested in studying law and I probably will do so in the future. But, anyways, I think everyone should read this book, realize that we've been gifted this great heritage of English common law that is probably there in your country as well, which we cannot afford to squander away. So that's it, guys. Five books, or rather, four books and one collection of works that completely changed my life. If you're interested in these books, then I've put the links in the description below so you can just check them out. But honestly, I think these books really changed my life, and I hope they'll change your life for the better as well. So don't forget to subscribe, share this video with the fellow bibliophiles in your friend circle, and as always, I'll catch you next time.